Okay, let's talk about interpreting box plots today. Today we're going to interpret our box plots. So they're going to be drawn for you and you're going to come up with conclusions based on the data. Okay, so make sure you write down the heading at the top of your sheet of paper. Make sure you write down the learning target. Okay, you don't need to draw that picture. It's been on there every day, but just so you know what a box plot looks like. All right, if you need to pause, go ahead. I'm going to go on to the next slide. Okay, in our first slide here, we need to talk about a new word today, and that's interquartile range. The interquartile range is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So remember, our upper quartile is this line right here, and our lower quartile is that line right there. So in order to find the interquartile range, you would subtract those. So I would subtract this value right here minus this value right there, and that's going to give me my interquartile range. Now to find the range, I would do the max minus the min. The interquartile is just that inner 50%. Remember that each section is broken into 25% of the data. So each section has the same amount of values, or about the same amount of values in each one. So 25% of the values are in this first section, 25% of the values are in this section, 25% are in that, and 25% in that, and that's how I get 100% of my information. When we look at box plots, we're usually looking at the interquartile range because that would be where the most or the average people are. Our median is right here in the middle, so the interquartile range would tell us the middle 50%. Okay, and that's what we're usually looking at. Anything on the whisker part of the box plot would kind of be the extremes, the ones that are way above or the ones that are way below. But usually when we're looking for averages, we're looking in the middle 50% there. Okay, and that's that interquartile range. So then once we had that number, we could see what that span of is and use that to help us answer other questions. Okay, you actually would use that number to find the outlier if we wanted to do the formal definition of outliers. Okay, so that's some background information. If you need to pause, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, in our first example here, we're going to interpret box plots. So you might want to take a second, maybe pause the video right now to copy down this box plot before I move on. Okay, I'm going to go on to finding the interquartile range. So to find the interquartile range, remember I'm going to take the upper quartile and I'm going to subtract it from the lower quartile. So that's just 30 minus 10. So the interquartile range is 20. That's all you have to do for those. All right, what is the median? Are you able to read this and understand that? The median is this line right there. That's the median. Okay, so when I follow that down, it's a little bit to the right of 25, so I'm going to estimate that that's going to be about 26. Sometimes they are labeled for you, so it's easy. Sometimes you have to just estimate based on where you think the numbers are at. All right, now, next question. How does 32 compare with the rest of the data? Well, what happens if I told you that one of the data values was 32? How would that compare? Well, 32, if you look here, 31, 32 would be about right here. So where does that compare? Well, remember I told you that these broke into sections of 25? Okay, 25%, 25%, 25%, and 25%. Well, I know that 32 is greater than 25, 25, and 25 is 75%. So I would say 32 is greater than 75% of the data, of the rest of the data. Okay? How do I know that? Well, again, I'm just counting 25, 25, and 25. All right, I don't know where it falls in that upper 25. 32 could, I know, obviously know it's not the max, but is it the next number before the max, or is it the next number after the 75? I don't know. So all I know for sure is that it's greater than 75% of the rest of the data. Okay, so I would say they're in the top 25% or greater than 75%. So that's how we could look at data to see where they are, where these data values fall. Okay, if you need to pause, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll be moving on to our last slide. Oh, looks like we got our hint today. All right, that would be our magic word. What happened during the video, you might want to write down that my phone rang during the video in case I ask you that tomorrow in class. Okay. Let's look on example B. The number of visitors in millions to the state parks in the United States. Okay, so this is like 2000 data from the year 2000. Okay, it's a number of visitors to state parks in the USA. Okay, so I'm going to scan down a little bit. If you need to pause, I'll leave it up there. If you need to pause that, go ahead and pause it so you can write that down. Okay, I'm going to go down so we can see the questions that are with our box plot now. Okay, so there's our box plot. In this example, they actually wrote down the different numbers. So I have 0.7, and that's for that, 4.6 for our lower quartile, 8.9 for our median, 18.2 for our upper quartile, and 98.5 for there. Because these numbers came out to decimals, they're kind of written down there for us. Okay, first, find the interquartile range. Well, that's going to be the 18.2 minus 4.6. Okay, and when you subtract those, you're going to get 13.6. So our interquartile range is 13.6 million, because these are in millions. All right, so that's the interquartile range. Okay, next, how many states had fewer than 18.2 million visitors? Well, I'm going to look here. I have 1, 2, 3 sections below my 18.2. So that's 75% or 3/4. So I'm going to do 3/4 times, there's 50 states in the United States of America. So I'm going to do 3/4 times 50, and that's going to come out to 37.5. Well, I can't have 0.5 of a state, so I'm going to say about, that's why it says about 37 states had fewer than 18.2 million visitors. Okay? So most of the states had fewer than 18.2. Right? You also could have used that as a percentage by saying 0.75 or 75% times 50. Okay? Any of those would have given you the same answer, because 3/4 is 0.75, which is 75%. Okay? So that's how you can use this data to find your amount. All right? West Virginia, next question. West Virginia had 8.0 million visitors. It has to be 8.0 million visitors. How does that compare with the rest of the data? Well, I'm going to look where 8.0 falls. Well, there's 4.6, there's 8.9. So it's going to fall in there a little bit. Okay, so that 8 million visitors that they had, how does that compare? Well, that's going to be less than 50. Okay, so they are on the left side of the median. So this is going to say, I would say less than 50%, but they were greater than 25, but greater than 25%. Okay, and that's where their data falls. How does that compare? Well, they're between the 25th percent and 50th percent. You could write it that way too. Okay, that is it for our video. If you need to rewind and watch anything, go ahead. Otherwise, have a great night.